Well, hello, welcome to the 6th Spotlight series on the St. Genevieve Museum Learning Center. This evening, we will give an update on the Museum Learning Center project and visit the trials and tribulations of repurposing the former Ketting building. My name is Jan Loida, and I'm the host for this evening. Tonight we have with us Robert Wolk, the chairman of the Museum Executive Board, Rich Rebecki, Public Relations Director, Steve Bacon, our architect, and the members of the building committee, Vern Bowman, Dick Reminger, and Bill Lurk. Thanks for coming, gentlemen. So first let's talk with Robert. Robert, can you give us an update on the contract with Lost World Studios?
Sure. At the end of the month, last month, we met with Mike Dempsey and the Darrows, Guy and Doris Darrow, and we sat at his office and we worked out a contract, and the contract is actually a mutual contract, which all of us are on the same contract, using the same attorney. And it's for the benefit of us all knowing what we're going to do and how it's going to be laid out. So we ironed out any differences we had or talking points that we had, clarified those. Mike Dempsey was good enough to take the time to put those into a contract, and then actually we signed a contract that day, which was the last day of tax season, which was, this year was April 18th, maybe?
Sure, April 18th.
Yeah, which is right when Mike Dempsey was busy as he could possibly be, but that's when we hoarded in on his time. So we sat with him, and a lot of the good questions came up. It was just the operating, how the museum's going to operate, what capacity the Darrows play, and I think the biggest clarification we wanted to make sure and get in that contract was that Guy Darrow, being our curator, doesn't mean that he does all the work. Sure. We need somebody that can direct us and tell us what needs to be in that museum, how that display needs to be set up. We'll have the worker bees there to help do that. And then there'll be a lot more, and it's, I guess if you want to say that contract is the footprint that we're going to start with.
Well,
we'll
I understand
build from that.
Will Guy kind of lead us as far as the theme of the museum, as far as his involvement and also the collections that he has provided
and
for
Jan,
us?
as you know, he's been around this all his life. This is how he's made a living and done this all his life. Doris is equally familiar with those environments. So what they're talking about is, how do we want to set the museum up? What story do we want to tell? What point are we going to start at? And for Steve and everybody involved with it is, how do you lay out a museum until you know the timeline and how you want to work with that timeline? So we worked a lot with those details, but the contract that we drew up will tell us what the curator's going to do. And then what the Darrows can expect we as the museum board will do. You know, we're going to set it up. We're going to have the board, we're going to have an executive board, we're going to have an advisory board, we're going to have the worker bees, so that when they tell us what needs to be done, we'll have people there that will physically come in, and we will call on them and say, okay, here's what we need done. And to build this display area, and they will be the brain power behind it.
Sure.
And then they'll tell us what needs to be accomplished. We'll use Steve and the building committee and whoever we have to accomplish that goal. And that was their main concern. They don't want to get in a situation where they have to spend every working day being down at this museum making sure that it's functioning.
Sure.
We, the board, will make sure that that's going to happen. And Rich, you might want to kick in a little bit about how the board's going to be set up and the 501c3, just for clarification purposes.
Yeah, the based on the tenets of our Constitution and bylaws, which I'm glad you brought that up, because everything is titled the St. Genevieve Museum. And once we turn the corner to the St. Genevieve Museum Learning Center, then I'll need to go in and clean that up so that we have a document that reflects, you know, who we are at the new point in time. Right. The executive board, the way everything is structured from a management perspective, the executive board by law has a chair, a co-chair, a recording secretary, a treasurer, and an advisor. Think of these 5 people, if you will, as the Supreme Court. Somewhere along the lines, there's gonna be, discord. The executive board is in place to not micromanage, but to oversee. And any decisions that come down from the executive board will be for the benefit of the facility, not necessarily hurt feelings, but that's not going to play into any decision. Now, we have a 501c3 nonprofit designation. I've been involved with nonprofits back in Massachusetts, 2 different nonprofits, and for the continuity factor, it's best to have the majority of the people on your executive board also trustees of the 501c3. It's not difficult to take one hat off and put another one on to make a decision. The trustees on the 501c3 happen to be the same 5 people, but with different responsibilities. With the 501c3, we have a president. With the 501c3, we have a recording secretary and a treasurer. With the 501c3, we have one member of the management team, and we have a consultant. So these 5 people, again, oversee when a school district needs funding to come visit. They don't have it. The request will be sent to the one of the 5 members of the 501c3, a quick email. What do you think? Can we afford it? Can we do it? Yes, yes, yes. 3 votes out of 5 means we can contact that school and say, please plan on coming, on such and such a date. We will have the paperwork that all you have to do is sign. Once there's a flow of money coming into the facility, we will be audited in May, June, or July of the next year.
Okay.
And we want to show the representative from the government that, yes, the money's flowing in this way. This is how it was dispersed. This went to salaries. This went to taxes. This is what we scholarshiped. This is what we gifted. So again, those 5 people are the same 5, but with different responsibilities. We have a management team. We have an advisory board. The management team and the advisory board meet the tenets of the wording of our bylaws. The management team it's all considered the board of directors. And the first part of the board of directors, it's the management team. Someone like yourself, Director of Education, someone like Stephanie Goodell, Director of Operations. Every people that, each of us as bean counters that have something to do with the day-to-day running of the museum are part of the management team. And then the last group of people who are part of this Constitution, the advisory board people. Now, the advisory board people are people who, for whatever reason, can't physically attend meetings, but they're there to answer the phone if we have a question. They're there to respond to emails if we need direction, if we need guidance. The advisory board, we have currently now about maybe half a dozen people on the advisory board. They get included in all the electronic communications that everybody else does. And having the executive board, having the management team in place, and having the advisory board in place, we do the first thing that is what has to be done, and that's meeting the bylaws and Constitution of, we're still the St. Genevieve Museum, so we're meeting the bylaws and Constitution of the St. Genevieve Museum.
So part of that contract, Jan, was that we wanted them to understand that we have this management in place, so they're not going to be responsible for every daily item that comes through there. That was number 1. Number 2, we're a partnership. It's not them against us.
Right.
It's Lost World Studios and St. Genevieve Museum Learning Center as a partnership making this work. So we put in the contract that at least once a month we will meet they will meet with our management team. They will be physically on location at least once a month. And as Steve starts laying out the building, they'll be with him quite often because they're going to have to lay out how the flow of things go in that building. So those were all pieces that were in that contract that needed to be negotiated and talked out, so that as a partnership, you need to have those things in writing so that nobody gets, like you said, hurt feelings as we move forward. Somebody says, well, I didn't agree to that.
Sure.
So we try to get all of that in the contract.
Well, I kind of look forward to maybe sharing with the public in the future the different teams that are playing to help make this museum learning center an actual, site for St. Genevieve. But before we go on to Steve, I'd like for you to just give us an update on the loan with regards to the procurement process, and then we'll move on to Steve.
Okay, the loan, when we work with the bank, the lending institution, and the first thing they said was, well, we'll work with you. We think that we can give you quite a bit of latitude because we want to give back to our community. So their requirement was that we have a contract with the Darrows, that we have a signed contract for the building, that we have a contract with the architect, that we have a pro forma for them to look at, and that we have at least 50% of our procurement money pledged to us. And the reason we got to include the bank, we're over $625,000, but we don't have $625,000. This is over a period of 5 years that this money will be coming in. Some pledged in 5 years, some even more, longer stretch than that. So we use the bank as a bridge loan, I guess you could call it, a bridge loan to bridge us between the time that these people are making their commitments and fulfilling those commitments. So we've done that. Matt Schweiger, our CFO, has put together all of the pro forma and all of those pieces and got it to the bank. I've got him the pieces on the contract, and the last piece will be what Steve will give us on his contract. And then we'll go and secure the loan and close on the building and move that building from ownership from the Ketting family to the St. Genevieve Museum Learning Center.
So as that loan is satisfied or that deed is passed to the Museum Learning Center, can you tell us what will happen next then?
Well, the first thing that's going to happen is that we secured enough money to buy the building and to secure the services of an architect who can then start laying it out and getting permits and moving forward, because I don't want any money borrowed that we have no use for, so we don't want to be paying interest on money. So those two pieces of it, Jan, will be secured. We'll take enough money to purchase the building, enough money to get Steve under contract, get his requirements met so that he can start moving on his end. And then as we progress from there and Steve gives us the pieces that we need to move forward with, then we'll start asking for more money. As we do that, Steve or the building committee or whoever is securing those estimates will be submitted to the bank. The bank will then allocate money based on the bids. And as needed, we'll start borrowing the money we need. Now, we do have some money in a pot, so we have that money. But once we exhaust those funds that we have that were advanced to us from individuals or companies, then we'll have to go to the bank to get that bridge loan to go in between.
Steve, do you want to talk about the different permits that are required to move forward?
Sure, we can talk about that. Typically, a building permit is required, and ordinarily that's gotten by submitting plans to the local authority, whoever that happens to be. In this case, it would be the City of St. Genevieve. I understand there are some other boards that we will be reviewing with to ensure that the plans meet the historical and and other design hopes for the downtown area. But typically, the building permit is sought towards the end of the architectural planning process. Something that we may do in this case to try to better understand the building is to demolish or remove some of the items inside the building to better to let us better see what the structure is, what the condition of the mechanical or the electrical systems is, and have a better handle on what kind of work's going to be necessary to bring the building up to current standards. So from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, it's different, but typically a demolition permit would be sought also. So that may be the first thing that we do is begin to document what's there, where the walls and doors and equipment and columns and beams are, and if we see some areas where we really want to know better what's going on, we'll come up with a demolition plan and get permission to be sure that that's done in a safe and clean way, leaves the building in good shape.
So we will have the front of the building still showing its face, you think, or not? Not sure yet.
Well,
We haven't given him any permission to tear the building down, and if that's what you're asking, no.
I think our mandate is to preserve everything that we can
Right.
and make this as efficient a process as possible. And so towards that, whatever is in good shape and is the appropriate character, we're going to try and leave it and work with it, work around it, and just try to come up with a plan that best utilizes the things that are there without tearing down things that we don't need to. So just to be clear, demolition plan is not demolishing the building. That would just be to get permission to, say, tear down some ceilings or to tear down a temporary or a non-load-bearing wall so that we can see where the plumbing runs or what kind of wiring there is or how a beam ends.
Well, Steve, we want the plumbing to work and we want the electricity to be sound, and we also want to preserve like the elevator that's very interesting and historical, and the front of the building would match maybe the DeBerg Center or the architecture of St. Genevieve, but we know you know best, and so you're going to honestly, observe the bylaws of St. Genevieve Historical.
The best projects are really a cooperative effort between the architect and the owners and the users and the city or the neighborhood that the project is in. And you can't always satisfy everyone 100%, but if you start with the goal of including as many as possible and gathering as much information as possible on the front end, then it's a lot more possible that you'll do better at that.
Yeah, I know that the Kettings, we had them with us last month, and they're so excited to have their building move forward to be the St. Genevieve Museum Learning Center, so I know that as much as we can preserve, they're going to be really happy about that.
And Jan, we might talk about the fact that the facade that's on front of the building was added after the building was actually constructed, so Steve will be looking at removing that facade and taking it back to the brick structure that was originally underneath of that.
So none of us know really what's there, unless you've lived a long time in St. Genevieve, right?
Well, we've got pictures that show the front of that building in the state it was back in 1910 when it was built. But it's going to be interesting to see what we find when we take that off of there.
The original Ketting sign will be relit in the
And the Santa Claus will be in the building.
well, yeah, that's there too, already.
Got to have those things for sure. So is there a budget that we are working within? Do you want to talk about budgets, or do you want to move forward?
Well, I think that we'd be premature to be throwing numbers out before Steve actually gets in and does the preliminary work. Is that fair to say, Steve?
Yes.
Because if we tell you it's going to cost us $65 a square foot, that may be accurate and it may be way off, so we would be premature in making that. We know the area that we want to be in, and with the structure of DuBourg and what we spent on the DuBourg when it was completed, we have an idea of what that cost is going to be. But until Steve actually gets in there and tells us, well, here's something you're going to run into that they didn't run in at DuBourg, or maybe we won't have to do some of the items that was done at DuBourg. So yes, we've got a ballpark figure, but until Steve actually goes out and secures what he needs to get firm numbers, we won't have the actual number to put out to the public.
Well, Bill, I'm sure that's why you were asked to be a part of this advisory board, because you've been very involved in the DeBerg Center, the reconstruction. You want to share a little bit of your knowledge and your experience with that?
Well, we went into it, and like I spoke with Steve about, with this new project, this goes back to the construction permit or the demo permit. We need to get in there and see what we have, because at the DeBerg we found a lot of surprises as we started into it. And I learned a lot from that, so we want to try to keep this a lot simpler, and for him to look at, would be better to go that route. And other than that, it was a long process, and it was an interesting process to see it all come together. And I'd like to be it, and that's why I joined this process, because Steve and I worked together before.
So hopefully with your experience, you're going to be able to maybe avoid some of the things that created some problems with the previous reconstruction, right?
Right.
And that you would know in advance what you need to look for, right?
Yes.
And we're really happy that you've joined this effort. It's going to hopefully cut corners and...
Well, it started back in the 80s when Dick and myself were involved in the RS. It's basically about, it wasn't quite as bad. It's not quite as bad as what the RS was.
You want to go historically back into that story?
I think the first day
Dick,
we
come
walked
on.
in there, it was raining more inside the building than it was outside. Pretty much, it was pretty bad.
Speaking of rain, we've got a lot of that to test the waters right now. My goodness. So, Dick, come on, share some of that. I mean, you guys have really been part of the downtown reconstruction, or...
It's just been interesting to see how those buildings were built and how well they were built back then, and some of the craftsmanship that was used, and with some of the limitations that they had, especially in tools and those kinds of things. Those people, it's amazing. And the fact that the buildings are still standing today and almost in as good a shape as the day they were built, I certainly, being involved in the construction side of it today on a lot of things and new materials, a lot of the new materials today will never last as long as what those materials back in the early 1900s, some of the woods and some of those kinds of things. There's no way things today will last that long. I don't even know if they're designed to last that long today, maybe on purpose, but it's interesting. It's very interesting, and fun to dig into some of that stuff and see how they did it.
My only experience is my first home that I bought in St. Genevieve was the old banker, Mr. Vouchers' home, and that home had solid wood doors and brass fixtures. And every year I'd polish them, and they were as shiny as they were the first day they were put in. That home was built solid. I understand what you're saying. It was one of the older homes in town. But now we've moved on, and I love my new home. It's fine, but we are seeing a difference as far as the soundproof rooms and the things, the depth of the building, the walls and all of that. So that's pretty exciting. I mean, we're going to move forward with this building and turn it into something magical.
Did you catch that at the Oris, they kept the marquee, which was an expensive item, I would anticipate, was it not, to rebuild that?
Bill was working for a sign company at the time. And
Don't
thank
give
God
away
he
anything
did.
that can get Bill locked up now. Don't give out
every
anything.
they said, does it work? And they said, let's go turn it on. So we turned it on the first night. I went outside, and Dick looked at me and he goes, what do you think? And there are 181 neon tubes on that sign. 2 of them came on. And he looked at me, and remember what Pud said? There's no way we're going to fix this. And I had access to the neon tube, or sign company I worked for, and we stripped it all off. Actually, it had been hit by a bus several times. The whole front of it was tore off. So Dick says, what are you going to do there? I says, well, I'm going to have to just guess what it was supposed to look like. And basically, we'd come back with that crown and everything. And then as I got into it, I found a lot of things that they did that it was pretty neat the way it used to work. It used to flash and rotate and do all kinds of stuff, but we didn't go back that elaborate. And that's like I said a while ago. It's going to be kind of neat to come around the corner, see the old Kedding sign and let back up.
Is it going to say Keddings, or is it going to say...
It's going to say Keddings. And
it is?
It's part of the...
Because it is the Kedding building. It
Oh,
will
that's
remain
nice.
the Kedding
Yeah.
building. So
But you'll have another neon lighted sign saying St. Genevieve Museum Learning Center, right?
Whatever they want to do.
I hope so. Wow.
that's going to be up to the city, I would say. You know, they're going to let us start sticking neon signs on the outside of this historic building. But that one's there. So.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks
Right.
well for the downtown area and preserving
Right.
the history of the town.
Absolutely. So Vern, let's talk about your role on the committee, and I know you can dig up just about anything, but what are you going to do for the
Well,
building project?
I don't, it's always a learning experience when you start on anything.
Uh-huh.
No two jobs the same, ever, so it seems. There'll be probably some mechanical problems, I don't know for sure. There'll probably be need some other improvements with the new structure or new design. But whatever's available, and I've been around a lot of this stuff over the years, so it's interesting, and if I can be assistant, that's great, so.
And you know, Jan, if we need some of those historic woods, we know where to get it. Vern's got them stored out there someplace. 'Cause you've torn down how many of those buildings are worked on them,
A
so.
bunch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can recall Dad tearing them down.
Mm-hmm.
And we had the fence around the barn that was built out of 2x12s, about 18 or 20, no, they were 26 feet long, 2x12s.
That come out of some
Yeah,
of those
we had a
buildings.
few of them there by the old barn. But they had a lot of them back then, and lumber was that long. Was
Get
hard
the
to come
address
by.
of his barnyard.
It's gone.
We may
It's
need
gone.
some of that.
It's gone. But there's a lot of things that you run across when you uncover stuff.
Sure.
And there's a lot of surprises in there, as you guys know.
Oh, yeah.
And look-
So basically, our job is to go in and really see what is there,
Yeah.
and then from there, we develop a plan. Steve, or do you have kind of a plan that you're working on already, or are you waiting to see when you get into the building what you have to work with?
Yeah, we're still in the learning phase of
Okay.
this entire process. We really need to see what's there, how it lays out. And then, and I need to begin getting an understanding of how the Darrows want this to lay out and how we need it to work. And there are some other modern conveniences and code requirements that will have to be integrated into the building as well. So it's best to wait and see just what you have, and then try to have as full an idea as possible from everybody that's involved, what needs to happen in there and what's the best traffic flow and the best relationship for one room to another before you go too far in trying to lay things out.
Right, so we have Guy's collection of things, the dinosaurs, and also the different cultures that he's collected over his professional life, basically people that have shared their collections with him. But we also have things that we know that we're going to have a theater, we know we're going to have a St. Genevieve room, we know we're going to have an agriculture and a mining room, and a room for the people in St. Genevieve to really share with the community and others just their family history. So those things will be more on the upstairs. We're talking more about the downstairs and how the Darrows would like to exhibit some of their
Well, Jan,
collection.
that was the original plan, but as Steve starts working it out, they'll actually look at whether that's feasible and the most cost-efficient way for us to do that.
Sure, okay. So everything's still being worked out, sounds like.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
How about, there's going to be a lot of services that are going to be needed to put this building to work. What about the bidding process for those companies that would like to come in and maybe bid for the electrical contract, or maybe the, floors, or the different things that you're going to need to reconstruct that building?
Well, I can talk about what a typical process would be like, and almost no job follows the typical process all the way through. There's always some variation on one part or another. Mm-hmm. But ordinarily, once we've determined how we want to use the building, and we've got the plan in place, and we've got on paper the changes, the physical changes that need to happen to the building to accommodate that plan, it'll be put into a set of drawings like people are familiar seeing, blueprints, and a project manual that has a lot of written descriptions about the quality of the items to be used, or the specific brands in some cases of items that are to be installed as part of the project. The plans will quantify everything that needs to be done so that a contractor looking at the plans can develop a good cost estimate or a bid when we get to that point for him to provide all of those services. Typically, a general contractor would include things in his bid like the heating and cooling, of the plumbing, the electrical, and some of the other trades. And those, the details of all those trades will be covered by the plans and specifications. So what we would normally expect once we get to the bidding process is that numerous contractors that have experience in this kind of work would review the plans and the specs, and together with their subcontractors, put together bids that will represent the same amount of work. They'd all be bidding off of the same set of plans, the same set of specifications. So we'll have pretty good assurance that whoever we were to go forward with, their bid would represent the same type of work that any of the other contractors would.
Sounds good. There's a lot of people out there that have asked about those opportunities. I know that as I've talked to different donors and given them the opportunity to come in and do a service to the building, they're interested in knowing about that. So that's good. Different phases of construction, but right now we're just looking at what are we working with, right?
Right. That's where we're starting, and as I understand the program for now, the first phase that we're going to work on is evaluating and getting the designs together to reuse the Ketting building, to get the museum in there operating, gift shop in place, and just get things up and running. Down the line, there's the potential to look at expanding or moving the gift shop maybe out of the Ketting building over to the barber shop building. That is yet to be determined, but that's something that we will possibly look at down the road. And I guess a lot of those things are going to be based on what kind of traffic we see and how the numbers come in and things like that. So a lot of these, my understanding is that the other phases are going to be very dependent on how things go. But that could be a second phase. And then if things just really go terrific and feels like we need more space, there is room towards the back towards Gabbery Street, that the building could be expanded down the line if it looked like we could support that kind of space.
So that goes back to our need list and our want list, right? Rich, you had talked about that. Robert, we've talked about that over the past couple Spotlight series, but right now we're working on what we need to get it up and running, because we know that once we open the doors, we're going to have people visiting. Stephanie's been very proactive also in meeting with people, talking with people, and getting the word out and communicating. So we're working on a brochure that will allow us to share what's happening with the neighboring museums and historical sites. We share information so that when people come into town, we have the opportunity to have visitors here as well. So, Robert, do you have any updates on maybe donors and people that have supported us in this effort?
Oh, yes. We're working on that. The procurement end is in full swing yet,
Right.
and we're working with several organizations that are working with their vendors, actually have agreed to go to their vendors and ask for donations for this community based on what we're attempting to do. So we have 4 of those individuals right now that are in that process. So, and that has been very beneficial to us. I would love to say that this board was the smart people that designed that, but it was actually Mississippi Lime. And they have been very instrumental in making this happen. And our first seed money come from them. The first large contributions come from their vendors. So yes, the other companies now are mimicking what they did, which is a big plus to us. So, and there's, as Rich said, we didn't contact everybody in the first phase, and we never wanted anybody to be offended that they were less important than anybody else, but we only had so many people to do this. And I thought a good number there, when we did the procurement for Valley and St. Genevieve Parish, Vern was the chairperson on that. We had about 75 people that were on procurement, that were out asking for money. This time, at the max that I'd say, we had 9.
Yeah, 9 or 10.
9 or 10 out asking for money. Vern has been very instrumental. Again, Vern has enough contacts that I don't think I have to go to anybody else, but He has contacts that have interest in St. Genevieve and have holdings in St. Genevieve that I have no clue about. So he's been introducing us to them. Several of them have made donations already, and he has a list of individuals that he continues to contact. So those people are very important to us. So, and I think the other thing that we'd like to bring up, and I'll let Rich address this, is if you haven't been to the museum in some time, tell them what's going on down there right now, because the existing museum is going full board, so.
Yeah, nobody can, in recent memory, think of the last time something changed down there. And since we hired our operations director, Stephanie, and we started a mentoring program with Susie Hollow, the two of those young ladies have just done a truly amazing job. They developed a World War I American and German artifact display in one of the back cabinets. That's, like I said, nobody can remember when a display was changed out, you know, for a new one. They weren't satisfied. They were happy. They were content. But they not content. They weren't happy that with just one new display. So they went digging through the closet, and I don't know if I mentioned this in a previous show, but I got a phone call one day to come down, and I thought there was an emergency, and Susie was holding the ladder, and Stephanie was on top of this 8-foot ladder, and she was bending over the top of one of our 8-foot display cases, and she said, every one of these display cases are full of artifacts. People have been just tossing them. When somebody came in with a donation, there was no place to put the items. They went on top of the display case. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have 9 8-foot glass front display cases, and the top maybe 30 inches was just airspace, and they were just packed with stuff. So we started taking one display, one item at a time down, and we had enough items. The girls had enough items to put a World War I display. We have a mannequin inside the display that's wearing a World War I American uniform. One of the girls called Kansas City, and the gentleman at a World War I museum in Kansas City described, sight unseen, what the uniform we were in possession based on the patches. Does it have a red diamond up top? Okay, that means. Below that, is there a yellow button? Well, that means. And we got a mannequin, we stuck it in there, and the girls typed out a little blurb about it. They were done with that, and they said, let's keep looking. And the next thing they found was banners, newspaper articles, a flag of the bicentennial of this town. So one of the other display cases, you know, some of the stuff was brought out. They killed two birds. What was good about this, they killed 2 birds with 1 stone. As they took an item out of the display case, they flipped it over, looked at the catalog number, went to the card catalog system, verified the card, and then scanned the card into a software package. So as they were moving one item out and putting one item in, they were working on electronically backing up our paper card system. They got done with that, and they said, you know what, we're on a bit of a roll. Let's, Mississippi Lime's been so instrumental. Let's do a Mississippi Lime display. So we're in the process of getting stuff, and I walked in one day, and Stephanie said, she was sitting at a desk, and I said, hey, what's the matter? You usually just smile. She goes, I don't know what to do with that. She said, we took everything out, we cataloged everything, but we're not quite ready to put stuff in. So I said, well, we're a museum, right? She said, yes. I said, well, what do museums do when they're in the middle of something? So she said, we have black paper. We can cover the glass and put up a sign, you know. display under renovations. I said, there you go. So you walk in the museum now, the glass is spotless inside and out. Susie, our intern, actually has become an employer. She fills in when she's in between classes and there's a need for someone to cover the desk. We took that idea and we contacted the Catholic school district and the R2 district, saying next year we would like to be a facility that's part of your community service. Graduating seniors have to do some community service hours. So we said we'd like to be part of that. We've got, and we made a laundry list of things that, you know, someone could come in for an hour and do to help out, keep the place clean. So you walk in the museum now and you see, I hope you don't take offense, a new computer, not the one that he donated. The one
starter well broken.
the one with the little gerbil when he jumps off the wheel, nothing happens, you know. So we've got a brand new computer. We've got sound. So they can play soft classical music, you know, in the background when visitors are in there, if they're not, you know, doing any research. We've got cleaned tabletops, and we consolidated all of the information of the other places that visitors who visit us can go after they leave us to go see. We've got spotless glass displays, and we've got the 2 new displays, and we've got the one that's under renovation. We also took all of the stuff that was above the 8-foot storage cabinets, and we consolidated. We probably have, as impressive as our Native American arrowheads and stone heads and stuff, as impressive as what we have on display. I'm not an expert in the field, but I think we've got close to 100 pounds of arrowheads and stone that's sitting in protective boxes now up on one of the cabinets. So we're still open. We just printed a 2-sided rack card that says right across the top, in the sky area, please visit us before we move, or words to that effect. And there's a little information on the back. Sandra Cabot took a ton of them to set up on the at the visitors center, the welcome center, and she's going to on our behalf contact the other places that she sends her cards out to see if there's room, you know, if they can make room for our cards as well. So until, you know, until the day happens where, you know, we give the county the keys to the door, we're open for business 7 days a week, and things are new and exciting down there. We were part of the Candy Walk. We were the last 2 Friday night art walks. We were a part of. So
Jan, I think what he's trying to say is, if you haven't been to the museum, like a lot of people in town have not been in that museum for 50 years. So if you haven't, we have changed it since the last 50 years you've been there.
Yeah.
Come in and see the new displays, because they are really good. They've done a great job with them.
And because Steph and Susie are electronically inputting our car catalog up on one of the clouds, they're discovering stuff. We have more than one item that we have patent papers on. And a couple of them are right there in the very first display case, opposite the desk. And it's stuff that, you know, I'm still the new kid on the block, so I'm surprised every time they tell me, guess what we found, guess what we found. And I don't know if the other members of the board, you know, knew about this ahead of time, but we have some pretty interesting stuff, which only leads me to believe, once we physically move, everything that we have in the closet that nobody has seen, you know, is just going to add to the wow factor. And, you know, we truly will have a science and history facility will have more than just a wow factor, you know, associated with it.
Jan, they opened the safe that Jesse James gang, let's say Jesse James gang, because I don't believe Jesse James actually robbed the bank in town, but the gang, Jesse James gang, robbed a bank in St. Genevieve. They opened it, and somebody had donated to the museum the actual story from back in the day when that happened, the write-up in the papers, and it's all in there, who was a part of it, who participated in it, what happened when they left the bank, how much they got, and it was the St. Genevieve Savings Bank. And they normally kept a large sum of money because this was the trade center for, in that day and age, this was the trade center, St. Genevieve. And they figured that it normally kept $100,000 in that bank. However, at the time when they robbed it, the owner of the bank was actually in Jeff City signing papers that he was closing the bank up. So there was only about $4,000 in the bank when they robbed it. And most of that was in coins. And it tells the story about when they left, they actually dropped one of the coin bags and it went all over the ground. And one of the thieves were down on the ground picking it up, and one of the old German settlers come by on a horse, and his horse had spooked and run off. And they made him go get the horse, and he said, "What's in it for me?" You know, and they tell the story, but it was in the safe.
Yeah, you
that
get
Jesse
to live
James,
another day, but that's what was in it for him.
and we were down there, and I didn't know that safe opened. And Irma Hogemiller told him, "Well, yeah, the key's over there. Open it up." She said, "I've been putting stuff in that safe." Well, the
The safe
articles
was being used as a storage area as well.
and it's full of great articles about that, and you know, that's very interesting story. So I've read them. You've read them. Steph and her dad have read them. So sometime we will incorporate those in the right spot, but we just don't have room to put all. But there's a lot of stuff that we have never seen that's down in that.
I don't know what it is about getting older, but you start to really want to know what happened before you. I know in my
Are you getting
grandpa-
older, Jan? Is that
I
what you're
am.
admitting to?
I mean, my husband just hit 60, and when I had to say my husband's 60, I'm thinking,
Oh, my goodness.
I'm
I got
pretty
sneakers older
I'm
than
getting
that.
up there. Dick, you're right there with him, but
He robbed the
anyway.
cradle, didn't he?
oh yeah, very
Yeah,
much so.
very much.
But my grandfather, in his retirement, went back to research his family and researched it back to the 16th century. So, and in the process of that, he tried to recover a lot of the stories as well. And my favorite story is the last hanging in St. Genevieve, where he had to announce the person dead, and the coroner at the time was my uncle Leo Bosler, and he was the one that, you know, pronounced
Hurt
him dead.
Harding.
Hurt Harding, and I have that story in my collection too. But it's just one of those things you should go, wow, that really did happen.
What story do you have?
The last hanging in St. Genevieve.
But
And
from
the
which
pictures.
angle? We've
Actually, it
got-
was a newspaper article.
Yeah, we've got the book from the Harding family that tells the story
Yeah.
of him and what he went through in his life. So you see a different perspective on it.
Yeah.
We hear the part about the murder and that side of it, but you never heard it from their side of it, which
And
is
what
interesting.
happened before, sure. There's always two sides to the story,
Yes,
right?
there is. So we've got that book too for the museum that was wrote by their family. So a lot of interesting stuff, but the point is simply make sure and come down to the museum. Don't wait until the new one opens, because there's a lot of exciting things happening. And we are now tracking with the computer. If they come in and they want something, they see an item that they're really interested in, we used to have to pull the card and then write down for them the information off the card. But now they can actually put a keyword in the computer with their new software, pull that card up and print it for the person. And there's a lot of people who come in and say, well, like the World War I uniform, there was a lady that come in one day and said, my family used to have a World War I uniform in here. Do you know where it's at? Well, they went and pulled the card, and they found out where it was at, and I guess that's the one that they now have on the mannequin.
That's the one on the mannequin.
But we could tell her, she said it was a uniform, but we said, no, not only the uniform, we got the shoes, the leggings, the canteen.
There was a special cap given to Americans who landed in France in that time period. And the hat was verified by the gentleman in Kansas City. So this was a uniform that was worn by an American GI during World War I, and it was in one of the battles in France.
So all of that information was on that card. But now they can actually hit on the scanner, put in the keyword, and pull it up and print it out for an individual. So if you're in the museum and you see a gun that you're very interested in, they can take the catalog number of that, print the card, and tell you everything about it.
And this is going to be a springboard for what we hope will happen in the new facility, where you come in and we'll have an app that you can load on your phone, and every item on display will have a barcode. Now, this is what I would like.
This is the difference.
This is the difference between needing something and wanting something. But I think it would be so cool if somebody comes in and they say, oh, I'd like, more information on this item. Well, you know what? Take your cell phone, shoot the barcode, a message gets sent up to our resource center. Somebody up there will respond saying they received it. Do you want to do the research yourself? They'll have a computer terminal waiting for you. Or do you want us to do the research? And when you come upstairs, the information will be ready for you. You don't have your cell phone? No big deal. What'll happen is somebody, one of the docents, somebody on the floor can use their cell phone, shoot the barcode, and the same thing happens. So.
Well, with the internet today, it's fun to research. I think people find it as almost a hobby or just something to pass time with.
It depends on how good a job Steve and this building committee does as to how quickly we get that done, right, Rich?
Yeah, and
Not to put any pressure.
No pressure.
None felt.
And the building budget will be a whole $1,000. So you guys can spend as much as you want.
But don't overspend.
But don't overspend.
We'll be careful with it.
Well, we have about 7 or 8 minutes. Is there anything else that you would like to share as far as an update?
I'd like to ask a question. Back when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, I took an architectural drawing class, and all I had to worry about was 3 bedrooms, a bath and a half, and a 2-car garage. You're going to be given, you all will be given a laundry list of, this is what we really, really need. This is what we would like, and this is what we want, but we know we can't afford now. What's the thought process like in putting all of this input together?
Well, I imagine it's frustrating to not be the architect in that situation, because for us to do a good job, we need to just gather lots of information. And it probably feels like we're not doing much of anything, but we are. We're trying to not only figure out everything that the owners would like to have in the building, but what they want. Is there a way we can do both? And also, what constraints do we have? We have not only walls that we have to work around and floors and roofs, but there are also building codes that are drastically different from when the building was originally built. So the best way for us to proceed is to gather all of that information, and especially when it comes to items like wants versus needs, you just have to list them all out, and you have to spend some time talking about them. Do we really need this now? Can we do this later? Can we do this and this other thing in the same space? Or if these aren't happening at the same time, maybe we can create a space that works for both activities and get more out of the building. We don't want to create a bunch of spaces that only get used once in a while for a few minutes at a time. We want the whole thing to be getting used. So we can charge ahead with some ideas, but it's usually best to take the time to really digest what do you have, what do we want, what do we have to work with, and what are our limits. And so at the beginning, it's kind of just a big info gathering operation and sorting and prioritizing, but that helps us find the right combination and helps us be able to explain to others how we decided to include one thing versus another if things happen.
It's like putting a puzzle together, you dump all the pieces out and you start.
It really is, yeah. Yeah, it's a three-dimensional puzzle, though.
Start flipping them over, look for the four corners, and go from there. The reason I ask is we've been doing research as teams, as individuals, and the successful museums, whether they're smaller than what we're going to have, or we're talking what you would see in Boston, New York, Chicago, out in the left coast, everything starts at the gift shop. You pay your admission at the back of the gift store. You go through your and then, exit. Oh, gee, did we come in that way? Well, yeah, you exit through the gift store, you know? And I fully understand the importance of having the gift store in this, like, phase one, in the single structure. But we have an idea of that building that's across the driveway as the future entrance. And I'm just wondering out loud, how much of an advantage or disadvantage would it be to not include that in the initial construct, so that the gift store is a standalone facility that's connected by a bridge that runs along the sidewalk into the side of the building, which would free up that space that you would going to have to move in a year and a half or two anyway.
Well, the one thing that we've found in all the clients that we've worked with is that even if two clients are in the same business, they don't necessarily do that business the same way. And so one thing, it would be important for us to understand the gift shop's role in the economics of the whole operation, but also what role does it play in setting the tone for someone who comes or leaves. Until we get further into it and really understand what kind of flow we're going to have through the building, around the building, it's hard to know whether it would be smart to delay that. I think it's part of this information gathering process. We really need to understand not only where we think we want the gift shop to be, but what role does it actually play? If it's the welcoming point and the goodbye point for a visitor, then it needs to be someplace where it's convenient for that to happen. If if our model is different than that, then maybe there's some opportunities to do things a little differently.
We're talking 30 to maybe as high as 45% of the income for facilities like ours will come through the gift shop.
Well, if things are structured that we don't need that kind of income for the first part of the period that the museum's open, then that might be something to look at, yeah.
So we're down to the last minute. I just want to thank you, Steve, for coming and being a part of this tonight, and
Sure.
also that we can introduce the board, the building committee, and hopefully as we continue to talk over the dreams, the wants, the needs, that you all will be a part of that discussion, because you know historically what has been, what could be done in St. Genevieve. So anyway, thank you, and we will be back here in a month for the 7th Spotlight Series. And until then, continue to send your prayers and your donations, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
But not necessarily that order.
Donations and then prayers.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Jan.
Thanks,
All right.
Jan.
Bye-bye.